Alright everyone, welcome back. My name is Alex and this is EVE Online, and today I want to cover an interesting topic that I don't think has been discussed by most players in EVE Online. Most of the guys in EVE Online directly focus on gameplay, efficiency in making ISK, how to deal with hostiles or with combat. That's all well and good. But in EVE Online, there's a much larger framework that kind of overlays all of those aspects. And that is this. EVE Online, by design, is an open-ended sandbox, which makes it far different than most MMORPGs today. Right now I'm logged in. I have my one active carrot right now. Her name is Mei Sui. And this character is one I've been using for quite some time. And I want to kind of use her as an example with the point I'm making here. The reason I point out that EVE Online is an open sandbox is to contrast that with a lot of MMORPGs today, particularly the larger ones, which are more narrative driven. Those are your World of Warcrafts, your Guild Wars 2. Probably one of the most clearest examples is Star Wars The Old Republic, or SWTOR. Very, very heavily narrative driven. But from a design point of view, they are games that take your character, and you usually choose a predetermined class, and you go through kind of a preset story arc while playing that character. So you're playing it as more of an adventure game than what we would consider in the West as a quote role-playing game, where you're playing a role of your design. You're playing a role of mechanical construction in narrative games. So for example, in Guild Wars, I can select a job or a character of a warrior, a ranger, necromancer, a healer, a monk. But that is not the case with EVE Online. EVE Online, you get a completely clean sheet of paper, and you need to figure out what to do with it. And that's why today I want to discuss about role-playing. Now, role-playing EVE Online does not mean being in character. Okay, that is kind of a little bit different. Being in character is something you can do, and that's probably going to be a topic for another day. But being in character is an extension of role-playing rather than role-playing itself. So don't go those two mixed up. So in EVE Online, role-playing is actually very important. Again, MMORPG, massively multiplayer online RPG role-playing game. EVE Online really does put an emphasis on the RPG portion of it, not just the MMO portion of it. So, when you have your character, or you start EVE Online for the first time, or even after many years, if you're coming back, there's a question in your head that you need to answer. Who am I, or who is this character in New Eden, in EVE Online? Who are they? And that's what makes EVE Online particularly challenging in comparison to other games. This is probably one of the reasons why EVE Online has a very, very dedicated community, but it's a smaller community in comparison to World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, or SWTOR. Because in those other games, there's already a narrative crafted for the player, and the player kind of goes along with it, with the mechanical gameplay elements of whatever class they choose and whatever freedom their game engine allows, but their narrative is already predetermined. EVE Online, there is no narrative. There's a massive sandbox, and that can be a very big mental wall for a lot of new players, particularly if they're ones coming from narrative-driven MMORPGs, which are frankly the vast majority of them now on the market. For those of us who have come from tabletop RPGs or Dungeons and Dragons, something like that, EVE Online feels a lot more familiar. We're used to take a clean sheet of paper and start specking out what I want this character to be. So, one thing to point out is to say that neither of these models are better or worse. They point to different strengths and they point to different audiences. A sandbox world like EVE Online, once it reaches where it needs to be and it has the critical mass and it has the community to create their own narratives, it's really self-sustaining in many ways. While a narrative RPG, one of the very classic issues they have, and many of us know this very well, particularly those of us who do also play narrative RPGs, like myself, I also am heavily involved in Guild Wars, is that once that narrative ends, there's really not much you can do. Yes, you can go in the same raids, the same dungeons, the same bosses, and kind of repeat them, but you're perpetually waiting for the next chapter to come. And that is why when narrative RPGs stop, or they stop development, that's kind of it for the game as far as the established players go. There's really nothing more new for them to do. The only thing that's going to keep the game going at that point are new players coming in and running through the narrative that's available. But back to EVE Online, though, that is not the case. This is an open world sandbox RPG, and we need to approach it that way. So you have your character, and how you develop your character is how you're going to interact with the world. Now, for a lot of players, veterans, new players alike, they kind of come in, and rather than crafting a character, they instead interact with the world in kind of a very helter-skelter or kind of an erratic way. They kind of see what opportunities there are and they chase that, and they kind of allow their gameplay to create their character, when really in many ways it should actually be the opposite, where their character can drive the gameplay. And doing it that way allows you, the player, to construct a framework of what your character is going to be in EVE Online. And that will decide how your character is going to approach EVE Online, and frankly give you the reason to even log into EVE Online, where it's not dictated by events or trying to jump into a corporation or doing one thing or this and that. You're actually operating with a framework in the world. And that's what I've done here with this character, Mei Sui. So I'm going to open up the character here. She's quite old. She's back in 2006, so this is an old character. But she's been on and off. She's been on now for quite a while. There are two things that create your character. And right now, again, I'm showing the biography screen, and we're going to go over that in a minute. But really what your character biography is the skill sheet. So the skill catalog is going to drive what your character is in EVE, at least from a gameplay point of view. In the gameplay point of view, what your character is good at and what they specialize in is going to drive the narrative. So here I have essentially skills in quite a number of places. And to demonstrate this, it's probably easier to show what I'm not good at rather than what I am good at with this character. For example, science, she is clearly not a scientist. She is clearly not an expert in missiles, nor is she in corporate management. She does have strengths in trade, which is nearly maxed out. Social, which is almost all maxed out except for freelancing, and that's a new skill, which maybe I'll use at some point, maybe I won't. planetary management. And she does have a number of Starship Command skills, particularly with Galente ships. She's got very good tactical destroyer, battleship, battlecruiser, all that good stuff. So, looking at this skill sheet, this tells you a couple things about my character, Mei Sui. She is a trader, and her main focus is on regional trade in high sec, low sec, and null sec. She has very high social skills, which allows her to maximize her standings among all the factions in New Eden, and really to maximize doing missions for those particular factions. And third, she's a planetary governor. She can really do a lot of planetary interaction. And that matches what my biography is. So just to read through this, I crafted this character with a biography, and this is the narrative. This is the story of how this character works and how this character operates within New Eden. So, name, Mei Sui. Mei Sui began life as a school teacher before being selected for implementation. Once selected, however, she left the rigid Jinmei caste system behind and entered into the business studies department at the University of Calais. After finishing her degree in both trade studies and spaceflight, she quickly found herself far beyond Empire space. Applying the skills that she learned, she became a logistician for several null-sec alliances. Over time, she became an advanced trader, moving vital supplies via dangerous blockade routes between Empire space and the Catch region. However, the alliances she worked for failed over time, and afterwards she joined the Galente military forces in the Placid Black Rise region. May became an active combat pilot during renewed hostilities between the Galente Federation and the Caldari state. More recently, Concord Intelligence has received several reports that Mei Sui has moved beyond Minmatar space into the Curse region, as well as the Great Wildlands. What her current activities entail are unclear, but it is believed that she has attracted the attention of the Serpentis Corporation and performs both clandestine operations and establishes trade networks for them in the surrounding regions. This is likely due to her skills in both low and null-sec logistics, as well as familiarity with Galente combat doctrine. This is a concerning development, as she can be a significant asset to the Serpentis, thus allowing them to extend their reach far beyond their current area of operations. She has also been seen interacting with the Intaki Syndicate, and is expanding her influence in the Syndicate region as well. These developments warrant closer observation by Concord Intelligence. Okay, so there's a narrative right there. Now, the narrative I wrote here in the biography actually does go over what I had done with this character. She came in 2006. She was part of the ISS Alliance. She was running some of the logistics for ISS before it all fell apart. And then my characters, which is Mei Sui, along with my main character, Alexandra, and my industrial character, moved to another alliance, which was it was called Insurgency at the time, which was not quite long-lived, but we went to the north and got some space up there, and then that kind of crumbled. And then over time, I went and joined Ushra Khan and, did some things there. But then I kind of refocused this character. I said, you know what, I'm actually going to kind of role play this character a bit tighter than what I had done before. So that's why I brought in this narrative with the Serpentis. So even here you can see, she's wearing the Serpentis coat. She has the Serpentis emblem. And I'm out in the Cursed region because that is where the vast majority of the Serpentis stations are located at, along with the Angel Cartel. And so what I've been doing is I've been running distribution missions for the Serpentis Corporation, particularly, and building my faction standings with them. So going back to the character sheet, now if I look at my interactions, you can see my Serpentis Corporation is now at 8.35. So that's very high for the Serpentis Corporation. and that's partially helped by the skill Criminal Connections, which I have maxed out at level 5, which pushed me up quite a bit higher. Factions wise, though, I'm still way low. I'm only 1.26, and that's actually still natively negative. I'm negative 0.92, but my skill Diplomacy pushes me into the positive, granting me all level 2 agents. But with the Serpentis, though, there's really only one corporation, which is Serpentis Corporation, so this kind of really doesn't matter a whole lot, unless, if for whatever reason, I go out to the Fountain region and I run into the Serpentis Inquest and I want to do missions for them, which is highly unlikely. But if that was the case, then this would be a factor. Now, the Angel Cartel, though, they do have multiple corporations here. So here, through derived modifications, and also did some missions for them, I've gone to level 2 for the Angel Cartel. Now that does matter, because now that opens up all the level 2 agents from the Salvation Angels, which I primarily work for, but also includes Archangels, Guardian Angels, all the other ones. But the point being that I'm getting to here is that I've created a narrative, I created a biography, I created a skill sheet, and I am bringing forth the narrative that Mei Sui, my character here, is an operative of the Serpentis Corporation, or is aligned to them. B, is also a nullsec, lulsec trader. And C, she works among multiple factions to really operate independently from Empire space. So basically, she is being a nullsec, lowsec resident. At some point, yeah, will I get negative standings with the major empires? I could, if I, keep going. And this brings me up to really kind of the last main point of this video. Having your character operate with constraints. This is something that players rarely, if ever, do within EVE Online, or frankly any other open sandbox. But one of the constraints that I placed on Mei Sui is that she cannot attack Angel or Serpentis NPCs. So here I am, I'm in Cursed Region, Great Wildlands, Minmatar space. I got Angel NPCs with good bounties on them all over the place, and I do not shoot them. I do not engage with them. The reason is that both narratively, it's against what I'm trying to do with the character, but also mechanically, it will damage my standings with the Angel Cartel. And I want to maximize my standings with the Angel Cartel. I want to get in good graces with them. I want to get the higher agents and get the loyalty points for Angel Cartel as well as Serpentis, and really become aligned to those factions. Then with the loyalty points, I can decide what I want to do. If I want to resell equipment into high sec, get some good money that way, that's fine. Or just keep the loyalty points for myself and buy specialized equipment or specialized ships. So for example, I've opened up the loyalty point store here. I don't have a lot of loyalty points. I have a little over 10,000 because I'm still running level 3 missions here. But I can get the Macarial battleship. I can build that. I have access to unique implants such as Savior and Halo. And this is just in the Angel Cartel loyalty point store. I can build a Cinnaball for myself. And I can build these ships for myself, for my own use. And then I can expand my character that way and maybe becoming more of a field agent. One of the things I was thinking of was with the Serpentis, I can get a Daredevil or a Vigilant and maybe start going around low sec in Galente space and look for ratters that are hunting Serpentis NPCs and engage the ratters and be like kind of a Serpentis enforcer. These are all kind of unique ways I can approach the game and that you can approach the game, rather than crafting everything in kind of a very open-ended style of trying to figure out what to do. So in closing, EVE Online is a game that if you really want to derive the most out of it, you have to have a narrative framework of what your character is going to do. Even if you don't use factions and you're not crafting kind of your own story of how you're going to interact with New Eden, you can still do that with a character that you're with, say, a Nullsec Alliance, you're with a PvP corporation or something like that. My very first character, Alexandra, my vision for her was that she was a Caldari electronic warfare pilot. And so I focused on Caldari electronic warfare ships, such as the Griffin and the Blackbird and then the Scorpion. And I maxed out her electronic warfare skills. And then when I joined ISS, I became a Blackbird pilot and a Scorpion pilot during fleet operations. Then after that, I maxed out all my command skills, command support skills. So a little bit later after that, I was flying a Ferox, a battlecruiser with, command, we'll call it command bursts nowadays. I became a support pilot in that. So even there, you can construct a framework and a narrative of your character that can be applied towards PvP, Nullsec Alliance, and things like that. And what it does is that it prevents you from scattershotting your skills all over the map and being, kind of confused or, not focused on what your character really is. The more you can focus your character on a particular vision that you have in New Eden, the stronger not only does your character become, but the stronger your framework within New Eden becomes, and the stronger your reason to even log into New Eden becomes. Because it gives you something to build into. Anyways, this was an interesting topic. This was a topic I thought about. I think it's an important topic. It's not a topic that we hear a whole lot about. But in a sandbox RPG and an MMORPG such as EVE Online, it really is kind of important. Because this is more like a tabletop RPG where you do come in and you do write out what your character is, and you're going to play within the confines of that character, rather than having a narrative and a gameplay system set out for you like we see in Guild Wars or World of Warcraft or SWTOR. And that's what makes EVE Online, to me, very special. That's why I keep coming back to it. I leave it, I come back. I leave it, I come back. It's like the old flame high school girlfriend you just keep coming back to for whatever reason. Same thing with EVE Online. Because I already have a narrative crafted in. And for you, maybe you can look at doing the same thing. If you're finding yourself a little bit lost, you're not sure what you want to do, create a character, create a story, create a vision of where your character wants to be inside New Eden. And you can have multiple visions. That's why you have multiple characters. You can explore different things within New Eden. And that's one of the great things about playing this incredible game that we have. Anyways, I am going to leave it there for tonight. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, it's not been action-packed. There's no been pew-pew or things blowing up or things that's too exciting. But I wanted to show you the alignment of your character skill sheet, your biography, your approach to the game, and how you interact with the factions of New Eden, and how they all reinforce each other to how your character's in New Eden. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.